Welcome to this 2-minute tips video, and in this video we're going to be looking at metering modes. Since I took my first photo where the camera I had a very rudimentary metering system built into it, cameras have really evolved and grown in the capabilities around getting the right exposure for us as photographers and videographers. The Nikon Z series cameras are no different, and in this video we're going to look at the different metering modes, because quite often we get ourselves stuck into a bit of a rut of the metering mode we use because they're so good. So the Z series cameras come with a number of different metering modes, and they can be found in the photo shooting menu. If you scroll down through the pages to the third page, and about halfway down is metering. Equally, you can assign it to the I button or one of the other custom controls, and I'll put a link above for how you assign it to the I button. And whether you access it through the I button or the menu system, there are 4 different options that you have there. The first one, matrix metering, is probably the option that most of us use most of the time, and we can get stuck in that. Matrix metering on the Z series, like the other Nikon DSLRs, really is where the camera meters a wide area of the frame and sets the exposure according to a mixture of tone distribution, the colour distribution, composition and the distance. And what it does is it looks back into a database of some 30,000 plus images of different kinds to judge the right exposure based on what it thinks the human eye would see in that situation. Over the years, that system, the matrix metering system, has got better and better, and that's why most of us probably use it most of the time. If we then go down to the next option, center weighted metering, this has a couple of sub options which we'll come on to, but in general the camera meters the entire frame but assigns the greatest weight to an area in the center of the frame. Now, the sub options, which can be found in the custom setting menu under B4, center weighted area, are less than there were on the D850. And on the Z series cameras there are only 2 options. You can choose a center area of 12mm, and the camera will assign about 75% of the weighting to the exposure that's within that 12mm center area, and then 25% to the rest of the frame. Or you can choose average. An average will just take, as it says, an average exposure reading across the entire frame. The Z series cameras come with the 12mm center area as the default option, and this can be really good when you're perhaps taking portraits where you want the exposure of the face to be the correct exposure. Now, Nikon do also recommend this metering mode if you're using filters on the front of your lens with an exposure factor of greater than 1. But most people will probably remember that this is a great solution for portrait photography. So if we think of center weighted metering as having an area in the center of the frame that's sort of face sized, if we look at spot metering, then whereas the center weighted metering had an area of 12mm, the spot metering has an area of 4mm, so much smaller, and perhaps taking its exposure from a much smaller area, which is equivalent to about 1.5% of the total frame. And whereas the center weighted metering, as the description says, is in the center of the frame, the spot metering is actually a spot centered on the focus point that you're using. So it's great for off-center subjects. If you're using auto area AF, then the camera will assume that the subject is in the center of the frame and meter for a spot in the center of the frame. So spot metering is good where you have perhaps a high contrast image where your subject is what you want to meter for rather than the background. The final option, highlight weighted metering, is where the camera gives the greatest weight in terms of metering to the highlights in the frame. And this can be used to avoid losing detail in that highlight area. So where this can be good is perhaps you're shooting in a theatre where the subject is in a spotlight, but you've got other lighting sources around the frame. but you want the exposure to be for the spotlit subject, the performer who's in that spotlight. So whilst matrix metering, because it's become so good, is a great starting point, we shouldn't get stuck there. We should look at the type of image we're trying to capture, the contrast, the nature of that image, and look potentially at using some of the other metering modes that we do have within our Z series cameras. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell next to it. Let us know in the comments below what's your preferred metering mode, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.